D block of Halloween horror over here at Blood and Black Run Podcast. All season long, September and October will be celebrating with quirky, funny horror parodies. Join us for your favorites, from satirical slashers to classic parodies and even some throwback spooks. I'm even told Abbott and Costello will be rising from the dead. Celebrate with us, Blood and Black Run Podcast, as we dive into HaHaHalloween. Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Run Podcast. I'm Ryan from cultsploitation.com, and I'm joined by my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
Oh, it's been a doozy of a day, I'll say that. But one thing that we've got going for us is we're still celebrating Halloween already, even though it is just early in September. We are into our new iteration of our Halloween season called HaHaHalloween. I really have to think about that when I get myself ready to do the laugh and everything, because HaHaHalloween is, if you didn't listen to our last episode where we started it, it's a kind of a version of our Halloween season where we take a look at some horror parodies, in the broadest sense of the term that you can think of. We kind of have a selection of different kinds of horror parodies, not necessarily even, maybe some of them aren't really, like they don't take themselves as a parody, but they end up being sort of like a meta style, something like that. So it's very broad, and we'll be working through a number of different types of horror parodies as we get through the 9 episodes that we have for this Halloween season. Last time, we did Club Dread, which was a slasher parody, and not one that we were really especially fond of, I guess I would say, but
to call it a parody is being very generous.
It's what would you call it instead of that?
It's just a movie.
Just a movie.
Things happened.
This week, though, we kind of have a movie that's, I guess, similar in the ideas of it, as like kind of presents the slasher dynamic again. But in this case, I think that it certainly tries to do something different. Like, whereas Club Dread was really intent on just parodying straight out a slasher film and using those same tropes to try to glean comedy out of it, I would say for this movie, it actually tries to upend the slasher formula and try to see it from a different perspective instead of just reiterating like the same slasher tropes and then like making fun of them. I think now is a good time to reveal the title if you didn't read it from the description of our podcast episode. But
what episode are they on right now?
That's right. It's 332, I believe, is the number we're up to. And we're covering Tucker and Dale versus Evil today, or I should say Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
I was thinking more the Mermaid Man, like evil, like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, from Splendid. Yeah, Evil. Yes, I think that Tucker and Dale versus Evil came out in like 2010. I want to say. I think right around there. I believe it was direct to video, so it was kind of released at that time on DVD, and maybe streaming services at that point too. I don't know if they were like huge at that time. I do know Magnet released this, and Magnet was a big distribution group of films that were maybe not ready to be released in theaters, but they would kind of release these lower budget films to DVD. And definitely didn't see it when it first came out, but I remember being like not too long after that, maybe a couple years after, being introduced to it. My friends and former roommates were like, "Oh, you've never seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil? Well, you should check it out because it's pretty funny." So we ended up watching it that night, and I actually really enjoyed it when I watched it the first time. And so I've seen it a couple times since. It's probably my 3rd or 4th time watching it. And, as we'll talk about, I quite enjoy it. And, we'll get into the specifics of it as we talk more about the movie. But how about you? You experienced with Tucker and Dale versus Evil?
I've heard of it. I know of it. Know what it's about, because I do remember people. One of the guys I used to work with at the local convenience store was a big fan of the movie, and so they should watch it. I only caught ever like a little bits here and there, because it comes and goes on Netflix quite a bit. So this is the first time that I actually sat down and watched the whole thing. This time on Tubi, and it was wonderful.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, it's on Tubi. I think it's on Hulu. You're right. It's been on and off Netflix quite a bit as well. I feel like they just trade the rights to like those magnet style movies quite a bit. So it'll come and go here and there, and watch it when you got it, sort of thing. Yeah. So this one, and I don't we'll probably talk more about the parody elements of the movie, but this one kind of circumvents the idea of having a slasher at all, right? Because the normal setup of a slasher film is teens go somewhere, end up being sliced and diced by a mass slasher or something like that. The traditional tropes of that. And Tucker and Dale versus Evil, obviously, right from the get-go, the title kind of represents a differing kind of scope for this movie. It's not a bunch of co-ed kids that we're following, but instead Tucker and Dale, who are kind of backwoods hillbilly types, kind of meet all of the stereotypes that you'd think of as sort of the hillbillies, and that's kind of the joke, is that they on the surface appear that way, sort of like a Hills Have Eyes style backwoods folk, and instead they end up being super nice and unintentionally violent towards some college kids who are also vacationing in the vicinity of them. So I think the idea is kind of nice and unique, and again, we thought it was a good inclusion in the horror parodies, because especially to come right after Club Dread, because this is kind of the opposite spectrum of what a slasher parody might try to do, especially including this in certain things like alongside Club Dread or Scary Movie, where they generally are parodying slasher films, is kind of a fun thing to sneak in there. All right, so with that, let's take a break real quick and talk about the beer that we've got on the show today. You were tasked with getting the beer today, and I think
I sure was.
You actually made a little trip because you were dissatisfied with the local options in our immediate area. So you decided that, hey, you were going to go out to a place that, further out place that has maybe a little bit more selection.
Instead of 2 towns over, I went 3 towns over.
Yeah. The trials and tribulations of living in a small town locale. But what'd you get for us today?
So when I went to, and this is a place that we've had beers on before. It's not that far away. Ryan's joking. He's jesting. But when I was going, I was walking around, and it's they have a slightly bigger selection than our main beverage hut around here. But not anything that really stands out. They'll have a couple of stuff that you wouldn't expect a place to have, but other than that, they usually have the same stuff. I noticed they had Newcastle. I guess Newcastle's back. Fresh 12 packs. I thought about getting that. Because it didn't look like it's actually brewed. It doesn't look like the American version. It looked like it's the British version.
Oh. I see.
That's back, so. But that's gonna be for another time. But while walking around, I was looking at their, they do have a section and the nice thing about this place is too, they have signs up that delineate everything. So they got to sign up for where they have their stouts. They got to sign up for their IPAs. They sign up for where the sours are. And they have an area for imports, and so they got Italian, German, English, and so I went over there and I'm looking at the German section, and most of the stuff we've had, or some of the stuff that looks a little interesting, might have been sitting on the shelf for too long. So with all that, I was kind of oh man, this sucks. But I was walking around and I saw they had a nice of the season, because the football season just started, Southern Tier Buffalo-themed IPA. Now, because they're not affiliated with the Bills, it doesn't say Bills, it just says Buffalo STBC with a mock Bills helmet and the Bills colors. IPA. And it's basically just their bog standard West Coast IPA.
Yeah, I mean, the barcode actually goes just to their regular IPA style. And actually, for all intents and purposes, you would be hard-pressed to even, unless you're actually looking in the store, you'd be hard-pressed to find evidence that this even exists, because we weren't able to, except for having it in our hand.
I thought it was different because when you look, it is on Untapped. So if you go to Untapped and you type in STBC, Buffalo IPA, it does come up.
Oh, does it?
Yes. It doesn't say whether or not it's different than the regular IPA. But regardless, so I thought about getting it because, again, Southern Tier, as we always say, the forgotten part of New York State. And because it's Bills themed, and the Bills just had a great win on Monday against those bastard Ravens, I didn't like the can, and was like, I'm going to want to at least have the can to save because, for Bills memorabilia. That being said, though, listen, it's not a bad IPA. They don't call it a double, it's a double. 7%. Big hit of alcohol, big, piney Simcoe notes.
Yep.
Just in your face with that West Coast style. And to be honest with you, it's like after I become mamby-pamby a little bit about this, because even though I, in my mind, think, very fondly of West Coast IPAs, we've been drinking, NIPAs for 7 years now, to where, very once you get one of these into your system, it's like, holy shit, what the hell is that? It's not bad, it's good. Again, it's a bog standard West Coast IPA, very much in the vein of Sierra Nevada's Torpedo. Excuse me while I'm burping. So I'd say check it out if you missed that West Coast style. The one thing that disappoints me is, with it being Bills themed, it's a little much for an IPA. You should have went a Pils or something, just because, again, you're going to want to sell these things as game day crushers,
Right.
And I was saying this, if I was I'm going to going to watch the game, have some buffalo chicken dip, some wings, beef on whack. Oh, I had half of one of these beers, and I'm done.
Yeah.
I didn't even get to enjoy my salsa.
It seems like they didn't really want to craft a new beer. They just wanted to roll it into their existing IPA style with a new can. And, that's fine. But like you said, in terms of marketing, it's hard to market a 7% beer to football fans, right? Because again, if you're buying this and you're kind of spurred on by the identity of the can, you're probably going to want it during a buffalo. You want to bring it to I'm not cool enough to get invited to these types of things, but a football party, right? Getting together on game day Sunday, you might bring this in a 12-pack and say, hey, look what I've got. Buffalo-styled cans for everybody, because you're all fans here. And then they'd crack in and be like, whoa, man, I just had 18 servings of nachos. It's a little bit heavy for me. But yeah, I definitely see what you're saying in terms of a nice lager pilsner, taking a note out of Thin Man Brewing, which they did that Pils Mafia lager, something like that would have been appropriate to market as sort of a game day style beer. So again, I
It could have been like a hell, like a hell. It doesn't have to be like just like coal. Something that's gonna be like, okay, this is something that's gonna because again, like I said, it's not bad, but like holy shit, like I'm only I'm like 2/3 of the way done with this right now, and it's like I feel tapped out and done. These kind of beers, like if you get drunk on these things, something's wrong with you, and I don't mean that be like because you're just like, oh, you're lightweight. It's because like by the time you're done with like 1.5, you're like. You feel like you're at sea in 1754 on your way to India. Like, this is the only beer that we like, drinking water that we have,
True. I think, again, this Southern Tier makes a good West Coast style IPA, in my opinion. I think this, again, I've had it a couple times, whether I've checked into it or not, but the style is good. They do a good job with it. The 7% for regular style IPA, if you're just drinking it outright, fine. You don't want it for a game day beer. You don't want it because you probably just had 3 hot dogs and you don't need to pack on any more calories because, the higher the alcohol percentage, the higher the sugar, the higher the calories, and the more full you feel overall. And so I think, like what you're saying, I definitely understand. I think as a, marketing this as a regular style beer though, as, just covering this as Southern Tier IPA, they do a good job. I'm fine with it. I like the IPA. I think it's pretty box standard as an IPA, but they do a good job. And again, what the important thing to note is that this is a West Coast style. It is not like the New England IPAs that everybody's making where they're trying to market it as their standard IPA. This is a very distinctive West Coast style from, interestingly enough, a Southern, a brewery that calls itself Southern Tier, and yet marketing with this would indicate way upstate North territory. So very, very confusing for everybody all around.
Fresh Adirondack.
Directionally. See, confusing directionally, but
well, also too, as I mentioned to you, when I said like, because you're like, I'm gonna crack into one of these. You're like, shit, a rough day at work. And I was like, careful, they're 7%. You said, holy shit. I go, yeah, I know. Southern Tier doesn't do low alcohol like beers. Really? Like all their stuff is like Imperial, like orange creamsicle ale, Imperial, I mean, they do have a couple here or there, but a lot of the stuff's really,
Yeah, and I mean, in this case, this is a standard IPA at 7%. And then I think they do also do an Imperial.
Have the 2 times.
Double IPA. The two times. Which is another, kind of a standard that they do. So, yes, they don't mess around with alcohol content. They don't care. They will give you high alcohol. Yeah, we've had Southern Tier on here a couple times. But yeah, I think this IPA is pretty good. In terms of just their standard IPA. And what do you think though? Did they not get the marketing rights to actually have Bills on this can? Is that
probably because the beer of the Bills is Labatt Blue Light.
Yeah, but I mean Thin Man, I think they pretty clearly.
But no, because they say just Pills Mafia, not Bills Mafia.
Because that's actually skirting the.
Yeah, no, they were because again, the Pagulas, they own the trademark to that now. They bought that like a couple of years ago. The Bills Mafia trademark, which was totally fan based and fan grown.
Yeah, and you're right. The Pills Mafia also avoids any sort of trademarked iconography of the Bills team as well. So I think you're right. You must be right. Labatt Blue is the one that holds all of the cards here, and if you step too far outside the territory, you are getting a citation. Because yes, so I mean, I guess that seems in line then with. I didn't realize. For some reason I thought the Thin Man one was actually sort of aligned with Buffalo Bills, but you're right. It's just
no. Listen, I wish in a perfect world, instead of them being with these commie Canadians, they would pair up with New York's oldest brewery, Genesee. Rochester's only 45 minutes away from Buffalo.
I mean, again, if you're Buffalo, New York, you're not You're not Canada.
One of the proudest moments of my life was like in 2008 or 9. I can't remember. One of the two shitty Bills years where they finished like 2-14 or whatever. And they beat the Detroit Lions in Detroit. When they started the season off 0-9. It's either 0-8 or 0-9. And when they won that game against the Lions, Trey Wingo on the Sports Center call goes, when he's talking about the game, he's like, and the Jenny Cream Ale's flowing in Western New York now. That's what they should be doing. Keep that blue light to, the commie Canadians. Keep it to the Toronto Argonauts.
There you go. It's true.
Don't act like you know these things.
I don't.
You
right.
You are hopping on even worse of a
on this one.
You're hopping on an even worse sports bandwagon with college football watching. You can go to hell with that shit.
I was just joking. I haven't touched it in the last couple of Saturdays.
Good.
All right, let's talk Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Let's get into that. I don't know how many of our fans cross over with football, but tune into Martin's solo podcast on bitching about football.
There's not much bitching. There's not much bitching these days.
It's just you don't even care to have a response. You just tune out. But anyway, Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
First off, I have a problem.
What's that?
IMDb has with this more movies like this.
Mm-hmm.
Rush Hour 2.
That's probably because of us. Look at the.
Hold on. The Cabin in the Woods, the Tower of Pong, and the French Connection.
Yeah.
How is this even comparable to the French Connection? I don't know.
Just serving us our own coverage at this point. I don't know.
Is it doing that for you too? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's for me as
like
well.
Who the hell would be like, what's real? Popeye Doyle trying to crack down, fucking heroin and.
The real issue is a person who does come on here just totally naive and innocent, and they're like, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I did like that movie. What else? The French
It was pretty funny.
I think I'll go for that for a 1-2.
Listen, Tucker and Dale versus you, pretty funny. Hey, with this movie, Gene Hackman, I thought he was pretty funny in that Ray Romano movie, Welcome to Mooseport. Let's see how.
Now, I would agree with the Cabin in the Woods. I've never seen the Tower of Pong.
I don't even know what the fuck
it is. A Jake Busey movie, so I don't.
How many? Hold on.
So
I was gonna say, how many times can you say that in your life? A Jake Busey.
It's a Jake Busey movie. I know. It's actually a short film, and it's by the director of this movie. So that makes a little bit more sense.
I was gonna say, not a side character, but a Jake Busey movie.
Yeah. Yes, but other than that, so I would agree with the fact that this is somewhat similar to Cabin in the Woods, and actually, this movie predates the Cabin in the Woods, though they do have some similarities to each other. So, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, released in 2010, and Cabin in the Woods, released in 2011. Very close together. Cabin in the Woods obviously does a little something different and goes in quite a bit of a different direction than Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, and we even toyed with doing the Cabin in the Woods for this series, but decided against it for basically because I didn't really want to, because I've seen it many times and I just didn't really want to cover it again so soon since I last saw it. But
I feel like that movie came out like in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean you can kind of think so, but it's.
Which I've never even seen it before.
You've never actually seen the Cabin in the Woods?
I have not.
Oh, no. Wow. Yeah,
Am I thinking Cabin Fever from the early to mid 2000s?
Yeah, you probably are. I mean, that was the Eli Roth film from the mid 2000s. You might be thinking of that one instead. Which in itself is kind of another horror parody. It takes itself a lot more seriously, but kind of a horror parody too. But for Tucker and Dale versus Evil, I think, obviously the title kind of gives it away, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing for this movie. I think, some of the things that I like the most about this movie take place right at the beginning of the film, because it does present itself pretty early on as sort of a prototypical slasher. At the beginning of the film, we do see a bunch of college co-eds heading out to the woods in sort of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre style of, getting together, road trip style to the woods, smoking dope and, kind of wearing the suggestible outfits and things like that.
Go
ahead.
Which, by the way, if Club Dread wasn't dead on mid-2000s to a fucking T, good lord, is this movie Obama era?
Yeah, it really is. And I was thinking that
with
as well.
the clothes and again this is where everything that's has pot jokes. This is stupid. You're a fucking idiot. Well, what about this? You're a genius. He just brought one joint.
Yeah. There's not even enough to go around.
Wow, that's real cool. There are 20 guys around us. That
Yes.
We'll be stoned never.
Yeah. I think, and again, that opening sequence, it's very Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque. Even, sort of the outfits are sort of they're kind of both a 2010s style outfit, but at the same time, sort of a throwback to the outfits of the 1970s with, the tube tops and the short shorts and, sort of that style. It kind of has a timelessness to it because, again, fashion trends reiterate every so often, and I think that's probably a portion of it too. But I think at the beginning, it really does start off like it's going to be a slasher film with your typical cast and character. Because again, the film kind of focuses early on the college kids, and they go into a convenience store and they sort of kind of go through the motions of what you would expect from a slasher film. Going in, they get a creepy vibe from the area that they're in. It's any old small town convenience store, but they're getting this weird vibe from it. That as college kids do, and it's it kind of presented in sort of a more serious type way. And then all of a sudden it shifts focus and it shifts over to Tucker and Dale, who are these two kind of hillbilly guys who are in the convenience store with the college co-eds, and they're obviously having some predisposed feelings about these guys, and that's kind of the joke as well, is that they see them as hillbilly backwoods dudes, somewhat creepy, somewhat sinister, especially considering Tyler Labine. He's kind of a bigger guy, and just typical hillbilly fashion. Well, what do you think about that shift at the beginning of the film? Because we kind of start out with the kids, and then just after that, after they get to the convenience store, we really shift over to Tucker and Dale.
Like it a lot. It sets it up real early that this is gonna be for shits and giggles. I do think that do a really good job of making Tucker and Dale very likable, very affable. They're a fun couple. They're like us. In making these college co-eds total douchebags and total buttholes that are unlikable that you can't wait for to see them get maimed in hilarious ways. I think the thing you forgot the most, though, about that Tucker and Dale when they're at the convenience store is they buy a whole jar of pickled eggs.
That is true. I
wish
don't
we had
it.
Why not? That's
I wouldn't want to be in the same room as anybody who's got a giant jar of pickled eggs. That's for sure. I jest because I've never had a pickled egg.
You're missing.
I have really come around in the last few years to hard-boiled eggs.
See, it's basically the same thing. It's just with vinegar.
Right.
Because I used to be the same way too. I used to I'm not gonna hard-boiled eggs and deviled eggs, and it took me until I was 23 to try deviled eggs. I'm I don't know if I'm gonna like it. And it's I love eggs, love mustard, I love paprika. Mm. And then it's sure enough, you have it, and it's you dumb fuck.
Put them all together, and it's
all the way, all the wasted years. It's the same thing with a hard-boiled egg. It's it's just a nice, soft, white egg, and then the nice, salty yolk, Yeah. Delightful.
Yeah, so, I jest. I can't actually say that. But, and again, I think that kind of lends itself to the whole dynamic of the hillbillies too, because it's not just the pickled eggs, but at the beginning in the convenience store, he's basically naming off all of these like kind of violent, sinister things. Like, I'll take this hook and this rope, and I'll take this, the chainsaw,
the scythe,
the scythe, and all these things, and again, it's meant to convey an evil that they might be harboring up at that camp. But instead, when you again, it's kind of an ingenious move to shift away after you kind of meet those college co-eds, and you're kind of thinking like, wow, I don't like these fucks at all. Like, they're obviously mostly unlikable. And you shift over to Tucker and Dale, and there's that very much congenial, like, nicety that they have, sort of a naive feeling to each other. A friendship and a bond, and then the film kind of does make that about face to say like, well, look what you were assuming about these people that you don't even know, that you just kind of saw them and had a particular bias against them. So I like that a lot. I think that works really well, and I think the beginning of the movie is probably Tucker and Dale versus Evil's best asset. It's really a nice switch from the perspective that you would normally get from this type of slasher film. And again, I think Alan Tudyk and Tyler Bean, they have a really good camaraderie together. Alan Tudyk is great. I think he's hilarious in this movie in a lot of ways, because he kind of plays the smarter foil to Tyler Bean's very naive character.
He's much more the straight man too.
Yeah, and not only that, I think both of them to some extent are kind of naive, but again, the film plays up Dale as the more naive one of the bunch, because he doesn't recognize all of the things that have happened throughout the course of the film that might put them at it might look bad to onlookers. So I think that's really great. And then again, I have to mention too Jesse Moss as Chad, who is, again, is given that name, not,
before the term had, the word had,
yeah. I mean, I think the word still had some connotations, but not the memery that it has now with the Chad meme and everything like that. But
it'd be more Kyle back then.
Yeah, kind of.
He's a monster drinker. He's Kyle.
But I do think that Jesse Moss does a great job of presenting that. I mean, he does, even outside of this movie, and no offense to Jesse Moss, but he does have that kind of douchebaggy face to him. You don't know the man. He's probably a really nice guy, but unfortunately, he is either cursed or blessed with that sort of college frat boy
shitbag smile.
Yeah, exactly. It's a perfect casting here. And again, the Tucker and Dale versus Evil is obviously working on that dynamic, and it recognizes the tropes that it is circumventing as well. So that's all very intentional. Same thing with Chaylin Simmons as Chloe, who's the kind of busty, I guess for lack of a better word, the intentionally kind of sluttier version of the main girl. They want it. Every slasher movie has that sort of like final girl who's like, oh, she's the perfect girl next door, and then you have the contrasting
whore.
Right, exactly.
The whore.
Again, the film is kind of playing that up with Chaylin Simmons as well. So, really great. And then obviously Katrina Bowden as well as Allison, who's the main final girl, the love interest for Dale as well. The film recognizes, again, she kind of has that sultry girl next door element to it that kind of puts her outside of the scope of Final Girl, right? Because generally Final Girl, and that kind of was changed up in the 2000s as well, especially with films like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake with Jessica Biel and stuff. But generally the Final Girl is meant to be like somewhat sexless, kind of plain. And I think
in the 2000s and stuff they were ratcheting it up, because it's like, to like, well, make it even like sinnier, like more sinning. Like, she's so sexy, but she's untouchable.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
it's not just that she's, she's not just like the Virgin Mary type character, but she's also like so hot. It's like, how could she even be so virgin.
It's like we were talking about with like Jamie Lee Curtis, where everyone just recently discovered for some fucking reason giant boobombles. Giant mommy milkers, and everyone like lost their mind on the internet for like a week. Like, oh my god, with that like I was gonna say Parent Trap, but Freaky Friday, promo, and it's like, where the fuck were you people? She's always had those. And it's like, you were joking, like, yeah, they were there even back in Halloween. Like, Carpenter had to tell her to throw on 12 sweaters.
Yeah. Strap them down. Yeah, I mean, I think here, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, and again, this kind of goes back to that 2000s, mid-2000s and 2010s aesthetic of, like, again, this film for Katrina Bowden, it is a struggle between, can her shorts keep her crack from hanging out? Like, that is pretty much the whole, there is a struggle between Tucker and Dale and Evil, specifically with, Chad, but the bigger conflict here is, will a crack pop out and how much crack will show, because those shorts are really straining to
like, what are those
in.
like when she like goes out of those shorts and she's into like the farm overall things.
Yep.
Just looks so stupid the way she has it like folded down.
I think it's supposed to be like, again, that girl next door, I worked on a farm sort of, but I also want to sexify it like a beer commercial sort of Jessica Simpson, and I don't know.
Great taste, less filling.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of all of that. And again, the kind of the aesthetic just works because this is a horror parody. If we were talking about this as like an actual slasher film or something and trying to take it seriously, of course it would be ridiculous. But in a film like this, it just all blends together and just adds to the comedy aesthetic to it, I think.
One thing I wanted to mention was when you were talking about Jesse Moss, also his look. Pure douchebag from the Obama years. Skinny jeans,
collar,
pop polo.
Yep.
The slick hair, like emo hair, the tight, skinny jeans. He's got the look.
He does. They got it down.
Also, too, what the hell was I gonna say? Forget it.
You lost it.
I think because you keep interrupting, keep stepping on. It's okay.
I think that another, great element to this film that I love about the first, probably 30 minutes of it is that the film, after it introduces Tucker and Dale, we kind of go with them to their new cabin in the woods. And again, this is sort of before the film has really cemented the slasher elements to it, before everybody's been murdered. You actually almost get, and I think where the most similarity between Cabin in the Woods and this movie comes in is when they first enter the cabin, and it's sort of like this Evil Dead style introduction to the cabin. It's like, oh, what are these writings on the wall for? And it just says like teens murdered in the woods and all these kinds of articles. And then what do they focus on? Oh, we get a buy 3 get 2 free hot dogs at the it's a coupon there and it never expires. It's amazing. Or like the fact that like they mention, oh, somebody who was in this cabin must have been an archaeologist or something, kind of.
That would be funny too, because like the cabin is very similar to the Evil Dead cabin.
Yeah.
If like the Necronomicon was in there, like, and they're like, what's this? I don't know, but hey, look at this Playboy I found, like, or something like that.
It's funny too, because, we often neglect to see it as such. And actually, I don't necessarily see the first one as such, but Evil Dead in itself, a horror parody too. I don't tend to think the first Evil Dead is truly that much of a parody.
No,
I really do find it to be a pretty good horror film in general, outside of the comedy element. And, obviously it does have that to a certain extent, but, Evil Dead 2 much more so, in terms of how it doesn't take itself as seriously. but they are in themselves horror parodies as well. So Tucker and Dale versus Evil, pulling from that, is certainly kind of taking from an already existing parody and jumping off of that further. But I love the fact that it kind of sets up all these ideas of them being at this cabin, needing to work on it, setting up the whole, it's almost kind of a foreshadowing of what's to come later with the beam that they accidentally knocked down. All of those things are great elements to it that kind of sets up the comedy later. And I think the best part about the comedy at the beginning of the film is that it really does take advantage of the fact that the viewer doesn't really know where the film is going at this point. And so once the kids start accidentally killing themselves on the property, that is like probably the best part of Tucker and Dale versus Evil, because there is really, for someone who hasn't seen this movie, doesn't know anything about it, especially when it came out, there's no expectation there. So when they start accidentally jumping on the the pieces of wood to impale themselves, or accidentally jumping into the wood chipper, those are really funny moments that I think still work even if you've seen it, but are really effective if you've never seen the movie and you don't really know anything about it. I think probably one of the funniest elements is when Alan Tudyk is chainsawing, he accidentally cuts into the beehive and starts running around and swinging his chainsaw like Leatherface, and accidentally chasing a guy who was just running through as well, and he ends up killing himself.
The funny and even more idiotic part about that is the fact that he was holding on to the chainsaw when he was running.
Right? Yeah,
just
keeps holding it down, and I know. I mean, it's great though. I think that part never ceases to make me laugh. I think it's just a really overall funny moment that kind of comments on horror tropes and things that have come before it. I think it just works really well. And I guess my point being that the opening is probably the most effective of Tucker and Dale versus Evil, because it does lack that expectation. Once you get further into the movie, probably the last half hour or so, the film kind of loses the uniqueness of it, where it kind of has to deal with the elements that it's already set up. So, deal with the fact that how do they get out of this dynamic of accidentally killing all these teens. The film kind of works best, in my opinion, at a more truncated version of itself, where it's just the antics of these guys who are inadvertently accidentally killing people. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think probably the first 45 minutes are really the piece of Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which I think works the best. And then there's diminishing returns on how much it is doing in the back end of the film.
I would agree. It's definitely front-loaded. The best parts of this film are within the first 40 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
After that, and the film is only 85 minutes long, so it's not terribly long. But you're right. Once the whole kind of shtick and half of these kids are killed off instantly, the jokes just don't flow as well, and because it becomes more traditional, we have to stop the bad guy stuff. With a lot of the focus being on a more serious tone after that. Not that it's super serious, but it's definitely more serious than comedic on the last third of the film.
Yeah.
And it definitely makes for a kind of a weak third act.
Yeah.
Because the whole setup is great. The whole the wood chipper. When the guy fucking jumps and Alan Tudyk ducks and he flies into the wood chipper. Hilarious. I was thinking the entire time of Fargo, oh, there you buddy, the wood chipper. It's great, and it's just that kind of stuff just go. The whole when the sheriff shows up, and they're And they're holding like the, mangled corpse. And he's like, what the hell's going on here? Like, you're not going to believe it, but these kids are suicidal. They just keep killing themselves on the property. Like,
the police element to it too is really great. I think, because these are things, when you think about expectations for the viewer. So again, like the viewer has been kind of privy to all the information. We know about Tucker and Dale. We know that they have good intentions, and we know that everything has been accidental. So the expectation is what's going to happen when somebody stumbles upon this issue, because there's going to be hilarity to that. And I think one of the problems with the film, it's not really a problem per se, but it is something that kind of crops up, and as we talked about, maybe makes the last third of the film a little bit weaker, is the fact that it deals with that issue of the expectation so quickly, right? So like the police show up very soon after the kids start murdering themselves on the property. And I think that, again, that's a really funny scene with the sheriff. Could it have been held out on for just a little bit longer to kind of bridge the gap between those events? I think so. I think it would have helped a little bit if it had, come just a little bit later, because the audience is obviously expecting there's going to be a moment where Tucker and Dale have to explain themselves, basically explain what happened. And I think it comes a little bit too soon in the movie, where if they had waited just a little bit longer, I think that scene would have paid off even better because of that expectation. But which, as it stands, though, I think that the scene with the sheriff is really funny. It's a great moment. It has a lot of laughs, and I think like Philip Granger, the way that he plays that role too as the sheriff, you can kind of see it in him. Is he like, I'm gonna be the hero? I'm gonna come in here and like, well, I better go see what you've done. Kind of just playing it off as sort of this hero character who's gonna go stop these madmen. I think works really well, but I do think that it would have been better served had it maybe come just a little bit later in the movie, so that the film didn't have to front load itself so much as it does. I think the end of the movie is not that it's not funny, because it does still have the camaraderie between Tucker and Dale, and the misunderstandings between the kids and Allison and everybody else, but that it doesn't have enough forward momentum to keep it going for that last third, and it has to kind of force things out. Like there's that whole expository flashback with Chad, who has to describe like, oh, my mom was murdered, like she went through this slasher thing as well in her past, and that's why I'm the way that I am today. Because one of the key elements in Tucker and Dale versus Evil is like and I guess in any slasher really, is who leads the charge, right? So most people would just be frightened for their lives, as Tucker and Dale versus Evil shows. Most of them want to run off. But there's that one dude, in this case Chad, who is like, no, this is what I've been born for. This is what I do. I'm going to face death head on and, tackle it. So I think that the film just kind of suffers from a lack of focus towards the end of the movie, where it doesn't necessarily know what it should be doing. And the evil part of that is, ironically, Chad, who is a college frat boy, basically. And while I think that's funny, I just don't know that it necessarily sticks the landing.
Not only that, though, too, I was thinking about it, because they are like a group of like frat and sorority, frat guys and sorority girls. Like,
yep.
Is that even relevant anymore in colleges?
Like fraternities and sororities?
Like, I feel like, because when we were in college, like, that shit was already dropping, but I feel like now, like, they gotta be, like, at, like, an all-time low, like, and, like, something hard to kind of connect with, especially because, again, like, you think of, like, are kids drinking in college these days? Not really. They're like, like staying away from the alcohol. So I feel like that kind of stuff, like too, like the traditional, college-style humor and stereotype might be even more outdated now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about how the sororities and fraternities are holding up now.
Let's see.
Was never a part of them, but
no, neither was I. I don't have so.
I assume they still have some sort of because they serve as sort of this clique that people can migrate to, and it's kind of the easy way to make friends. But I don't know. I don't know how they're faring in this modern age. I think even in 2010s there was quite a bit of a different perspective on even college
frat culture.
Yeah, for college frat culture in general. Yeah. With that said, I mean, I think. What do you think about the scope of the theme? Basically the theme itself is like. I think it's the theme itself, I should say, is maybe a little bit hypocritical, right? Because the idea is that don't judge a person based on stereotypes. Tucker and Dale being a great example. Don't judge them because they're... What's that?
Amen, brother.
Yeah, right? It's like, don't judge them. They're a great example. Don't judge them by, the stereotype that you would see for a hillbilly type character. At the same time, the film does kind of judge Chad right from the beginning as sort of like, oh, he's a frat boy douche. And at the end of the movie, what does he turn out to be? A murderous frat boy douche.
But he's also half hillbilly.
True. Yeah.
He's hillbilly.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Like, how do you feel about the themes of the film? Or are we even really supposed to take them seriously?
I don't really care. I think it's more just a setup for things. I think they're not supposed to be these, Aesop's fables at the end of the day where you're walking away like, well, I learned something today. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover. That was evident from the setup when, the kids are driving and Tucker and Dale drive next to them. They're drinking beer, and they just so. I think it's just more about the humor.
Yeah.
And what comes after that.
I think that's true. I think Tucker and Dale versus Evil really does set the humor first and foremost in the film, and then kind of everything else kind of comes after. So I think that's probably the case. You're not really supposed to take the whole theme seriously as much as it is just there to kind of circumvent the slasher tropes. I guess with that, overall, what do you think about the comedy of Tucker and Dale versus Evil? Does it work as a sort of like a parody of the slasher film that kind of upends what you would generally expect? Is it unique enough to kind of set it as outside of the scope of like a normal horror parody?
Yeah, I think it works. I definitely felt, especially compared to Club Dread, I thought it was a pretty fun time. It does have a lot of just really subtle jokes about it's tying into general slasher themes. It's not ham-fisted with them like you said, like with the Evil Dead references with the cabin and such. So it's especially if you're a horror fan and a slasher fan, you're gonna appreciate it. You're gonna appreciate the humor. You're gonna appreciate the jokes. But as you said, I do think that the film's greatest failing is that third act, to where the humor kind of just comes right to a dead stop, and it's the jokes aren't as prominent, and when they are, they're not as effective as the first two acts. So, but I do think it does work overall, though.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think I think it's kind of a unique enough idea where it really does set it apart from some of the other slasher films, and it does try to see things in a different perspective, and I think that works probably about as well as it could. And again, in 2010, it might have seemed even a little bit more unique than it does today, because we have to think 15 years ago, there were just that much less in terms of parodies. It's kind of hard to believe, but yeah, it's been 15 years since this movie released. So I think overall, I would say it works really well. And I guess that kind of leads us to rating this film. As I think we've exhausted some of the other elements to it. So on a scale of 0 to 10 really generic trivia board games, which I think the game that they play is just literally called trivia.
Just that's trivia.
You want to play trivia?
Which is hilarious,
Yeah. What would you give Tucker and Dale versus Evil?
I'll give it a 6.5. I thought it's a pretty fun movie. It's got a lot of good comedy. It definitely, has some good, fun kills, smart setup, generic, boring payoff at the end. As you were talking about, Alan Tudyk is great, and so is Tyler Labine. They do a great job. I would say the rest of the cast is very, for them, I would say, just there. But Tucker and Dale are the stars of the show, and it would have been cool to have seen, because I was seeing on IMDb, them like an idea for a sequel was Tucker and Dale go to Yale, it's gonna be Goodwill Hunting and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Sure,
that would have been great. If this turned out to be a Harold and Kumar series,
or Ernest.
That would be totally fun. It's a well-made, well-shot, well thought out, little horror, comedy.
Yeah.
But like I said, and you said, the last third where it tries to be more serious, just makes the film less enjoyable. So 6.5 out of 10. I would recommend it.
I would give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a pretty fun film. Like I said, I've seen it 3 or 4 times at this point, and every time it really never ceases to make me laugh, even though I do know what's coming. I think that, the expectation of it, though, is part of the charm of the movie. And so it works best when you haven't seen it. And again, it works at its best when it's about 45 minutes through and you really are seeing the extent of the misunderstanding. I think that's really where the film shines. Once it kind of has set that up and that's kind of pushed aside. The element of the final girl surviving and Tucker and Dale kind of stopping Chad, I think that, it's okay, but it doesn't have the charm that the first half of the movie has. I do also want to point out the fact that this film has a number of key players that also star in Hallmark Christmas movies, including Katrina Bowden. Chalon Simmons has been in a couple, not starring, but just showing up in a couple of those as well. So it does mess around with our Hallmark movies too. And I would say that I think the film is pretty successful as a slasher comedy that circumvents the tropes and kind of tries to do something a little bit different with the subgenre of horror parody. And I would recommend it as well because I think it's really funny. I think if you've never seen it, it would be very funny. If you have seen it before, it's still funny in parts, and a lot of things are referenceable as well. I think a lot of the lines in here are memorable to where you might use them again. I also want to point out too that for some reason IMDb has a pickled eggs tag, so you can search movies with pickled eggs in them as well, which is surprising and disturbing that people have archived all those things. But yeah, really interesting.
That's him.
That's right. Speaking of pickled eggs. But anyway, yes, I think Tucker and Dale is very fun. Alan Tudyk is a blast in this movie. You should watch it if you haven't seen it. It is fun. And we didn't talk about this, but how is it for a Halloween movie? I think it's pretty fun for a Halloween movie. I think it's just a kind of a fun time to throw on. If you're
not everything Halloween movie wise has to be,
like a
within the,
atmospheric.
Samhain spirit.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's fun. I think it's fun for Halloween. So again, that's why we did it for our special episode. All right, well, thanks for listening to our episode on Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Next time, we're going to be covering another different kind of horror parody. I don't know that we have it like completely locked down yet as to what the next scheduled event will be, but I know we have a lot of stuff on the agenda. I have a couple things that I know I definitely want to save towards Halloween itself, like when we get really close to the holiday. I also have some things that I like would be very similar to Tucker and Dale versus Evil or Club Dread, and I don't really want to cover those either. So we'll talk about what we want to do next for the show. But suffice to say, we have a lot of different things that we have on the agenda for our horror parody Halloween festivities. So you'll want to stay tuned. So yeah, thanks for listening. You can check us out on any podcast app that you can think of. We're on our home base at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much any podcast app you can think of. So subscribe, leave us a nice review. We're on Facebook and Blue Sky. Search for us on there, Blood and Black Rum Podcast. You can email us at bloodandblackrumPodcast@gmail.com, or you can write to us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what movies you want us to cover, and we'll keep that in consideration. And you can also donate to us on our Patreon page or at Spotify. Anything you donate goes back towards beer, so we appreciate that in advance. Thanks for listening to our episode on Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Hope you're having a great Halloween season so far. And stay tuned for the rest of our Halloween episodes for HaHaHalloween. Until next time.
Take care.